thrown away like junk. The alien market on planet Harnock was loud and dirty, and full of strange smells and sounds. Creatures with 6 legs bargained for fruit, while robotic arms lifted boxes across cracked stone floors. But no one noticed the girl, sitting in the corner. She was not human, not machine, not beast, just something in between. Her skin was soft violet like fading bruises, her eyes dull green and too tired to blink. She sat still like a broken doll, hands in her lap, feet bare, lips dry, collar blinked red around her neck, and a small sign beside her read, "Clearance stock, 1 credit only." Some traders laughed when they walked past her, saying things like, "She can't even beg properly, or I've seen better meat on dying lizards." No one stopped, not until a tall human man with brown hair and dust-covered boots paused in front of her. He had been walking through the market buying spare ship parts and cheap water filters. But now he stood still. His shadow, falling over her like a blanket, stared at her face while the wind carried the smell of burning oil and fried roots. The man's name was Jack, and he had seen many things in the war: burned cities, children with empty eyes, even monsters with no mouths. But something in this girl's silence hurt him more than all of it. She didn't look up, not even once. The trader nearby noticed Jack staring and came closer, chewing a dried root with yellow teeth. "That one's broken," he said. "Don't know her species exactly, but she's no use. Can't cook, can't clean, doesn't talk." Jack said nothing. The trader smirked and pointed to the tag, 1 credit. He said, "Cheaper than my shoes." Jack looked again. The girl's arms had thin scars, like wires had wrapped around them too long. Her hair was cut uneven, like someone tried to remove something from her head. Still, she sat quiet, waiting for something or nothing. Another trader nearby shouted, "Hey, human, you buying trash now?" More laughter echoed through the market. Jack reached into his coat and pulled out 1 credit, a thin metal disc. He placed it on the table next to the trader done. He said. The trader blinked in surprise, but took the credit with a shrug. "Your problem now," he muttered. Jack crouched down in front of the girl, gently speaking. "Can you walk?" "No." Answer. "Can you move?" Still nothing. He reached out his hand and touched her shoulder softly, like touching glass. Her skin was cold. Then slowly, very slowly, she turned her head and looked at him. Her eyes were hollow, but there was something behind them, something trying to wake up. Jack whispered again, "Come with me." She didn't speak, but after a few seconds she moved her leg, then the other, then stood up, steady but standing. People in the market stared, confused and amused. Some clapped slowly, others threw pebbles toward her feet like shooing a stray animal. She didn't flinch. Jack walked with her hand gently on her back, guiding her through the crowd. She followed like a ghost as they reached the edge of the market. Someone shouted, "She's not worth saving, human." "Just dead weight." Jack didn't reply. They walked back to his small ship parked at the edge of a dusty cliff. Inside was simple: 2 chairs, a bunk bed, a food unit, and a box of old clothes. He let her sit on the soft bed while he poured water into a clean cup. She watched every movement like she expected pain or tricks. When he handed her the cup, she didn't take it at first. He placed it beside her and stepped back. Only then did she lift the cup slowly and drink the water. With shaking hands, Jack spoke again gently. "Do you have a name?" No answer. He waited, then sat nearby, not too close, just enough to make her feel not alone. After a while, she placed the empty cup down and looked around the room. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She tried to speak, but the words had been forgotten, like dust swept away by years of silence. Jack nodded, understanding. "It's okay," he said. "You're safe here now." She closed her eyes and leaned back slowly into the blanket. For the first time, she didn't look afraid. Outside, the wind howled and sand brushed against the ship's metal walls. Inside, silence returned, but it was not empty anymore. It was the beginning of something. Something no one in that market could buy or sell or laugh at. Not anymore. She didn't even know her own name. Jack flew the ship away from the alien market into the quiet space beyond the red clouds of Harnock. He didn't speak much, and the girl didn't either. She sat with her knees pulled to her chest on the soft seat near the window, watching stars drift by like glowing dust. Her eyes were open, but they looked empty, like she was not really there. Jack placed a tray of food near her. Some fruit paste and warm flatbread, soft and easy to chew. She didn't move, he said in a gentle voice. Eat it, you need strength. Still. She stayed still like a stone. After 10 minutes, she slowly reached for the food, touched it, then pulled her hand back like it was hot. Jack didn't push her. He just returned to the pilot seat and kept flying. Later, when he turned around, the plate was empty. That night, Jack gave her a blanket, clean and warm, and showed her the small bed in the corner. She stood beside it, but didn't lie down. He left her there and went to sleep on the floor near the engine room so she would feel safe. In the middle of the night, he woke to the sound of soft crying. Not loud, not sharp, just quiet, broken sobs. He didn't go to her. He just whispered, "You're safe now, you can cry here." The next day, Jack showed her how to use the washing unit. He gave her new clothes, loose and soft. She touched the fabric like it was a rare gift. When she stepped out of the bathroom, her hair was wet, her eyes clearer, but she didn't speak. Jack tried again. "What is your name?" She tilted her head, confused. "Do you remember anything? Where you're from? What they called you?" She pressed her fingers to her neck, then her forehead, then shook her head slowly. Jack sighed and looked down. "Then I'll give you a name for now, just until you remember." He thought for a second, then smiled gently. "Lisa," he said. "You look like Elisa." She blinked. No rejection, no nod, just acceptance. Lisa it was. He taught her simple words every day, using objects in the ship water. He said, pointing to the cup. She repeated softly, "Wah." Ter food, sleep. Safe, she learned slowly, but each word brought more light into her eyes. Sometimes she tried to help. She folded blankets, wiped the table, even organized the small toolkit near the engine. Jack didn't stop her. It made her feel real, but sometimes she still froze. One time the ship lights flickered from a power surge and Lisa screamed and dropped to the floor, covering her head. Jack rushed to her side, heart racing. She trembled like a child in a storm. He whispered, "It's okay. It's just the light. It's nothing bad." It took an hour before she calmed down. He realized. Then someone used light to punish her. Maybe flashes. Maybe shocks. Maybe worse. That night she stayed close to him, not touching, just sitting near. Like being alone was more painful than the memory. In the days that followed, Jack played old earth music on the speaker, soft piano and gentle strings. Lisa sat near the sound and listened. One day she hummed along with a tune, and Jack nearly dropped his cup. It was the first time she made sound without fear. Then something strange happened. She started to dream. She would fall asleep and whisper words in her sleep. Words Jack didn't understand. Maybe her old language, maybe fragments of her past. He wrote them down, hoping they might mean something. One night, while Jack was fixing a loose wire near the back panel, Lisa walked up slowly and touched his shoulder. He looked up, surprised. She opened her mouth and spoke. "Why humankind?" Her voice was rough, like dry leaves rubbing together. Jack blinked. "Why am I kind? You mean?" She nodded. He put down his tool and thought, "Because someone has to be." Lisa didn't reply, but she smiled for the first time. It was small, faint, barely there. But it was real. That night she slept, on the bed without shaking. Jack stayed awake, watching the stars outside. He wondered who she really was, where she came from, and who had broken her so badly that even kindness felt strange. But one thing he knew now, Lisa was no longer trash. She was someone, and she was beginning to return to life. The mark of ownership. Jack was cleaning the ship's medkit when he noticed a faint glow from under Lisa's collar. It blinked slowly, like a heartbeat, red and steady. He asked her softly, "Does it hurt?" Lisa touched her neck and shook her head, but her eyes looked away. Her hands curled tightly like she was hiding something. Jack stood up and walked closer slowly with no sudden moves. "Can I see it, please?" She hesitated, then nodded once. He gently moved the collar to the side, and what he saw made his stomach twist. Under her skin was a thin metallic thread, shaped in strange symbols glowing red. Not just decoration, it was a mark of ownership. It was a coded tag used in deep space slave markets to track living inventory. She wasn't just sold once. She had been registered property A number in a system cold and forgotten. Jack stepped back and Lisa quickly covered her neck again, afraid she had done something wrong. "You didn't do anything," Jack said gently. "It's them. They're the monsters." He went to his console and searched through old codes from the war. The pattern in her tag was from a black market genetics lab called Zero's Core. It was shut down years ago after the council discovered illegal cloning and weapon testing. But this tag meant someone out there still had access, and they might come looking for her. That night, Jack didn't sleep. He stayed at the terminal trying to decode the mark. Meanwhile, Lisa walked into the room and sat across from him. Her hands folded like a student, waiting for class. She asked a question in a low voice. "Is bad?" He looked at her and nodded. "It means someone once owned you, and maybe they still think they do." Lisa looked down. Jack leaned forward. "But they don't." He stood and took a small toolkit from the drawer, then said softly, "I can remove it if you want." Lisa froze. Then slowly she shook her head. "It explode." Jack frowned. "Who told you that?" She whispered. "They did." Jack held her hand gently. "They lied." He took out a scanning device and ran it over the collar. "Then the market's just a tracker? No explosives, I promise." She still looked scared but didn't pull away. Jack used a cold spray to numb her neck, then pressed a small wire cutter to the collar's lock. With a quiet click, it opened and fell to the floor. The red light on the mark flickered and faded. The code still remained under her skin, but now it was off the grid. No more signals, no more alerts, no more leash. Lisa reached up and touched her bare neck. Her fingers trembled. She looked at Jack with wide eyes filled with something new. Not fear, not confusion, but freedom. He gave her a mirror. She looked at her reflection like she had never seen herself before. No collar, no tag, no chains, just her. She whispered again, "Lisa." Jack smiled. "Yes, that's you now, just you." But something had already started moving far away. On a distant station, an old terminal blinked to life. An alarm appeared. Subject ZC-72. Offline, a man in a black coat stared at the screen, then turned to his crew. "We found her. She's active again. Prepare the team back on the ship." Lisa began speaking more. She asked questions. What is moon? Why stars move? What is dream? She was curious about everything, like a child learning the world again. She even drew pictures with Jack's pen on. Scraps of paper stars, circles her own face with long hair and small dots where her tears used to fall. One night she touched Jack's arm and said softly, "I was not born. I think I was built." Jack looked at her and nodded slowly. "Maybe that's true. But that doesn't change who you are now." She looked at her hands. "Still feel?" He answered, "Exactly." Suddenly a light blinked on the ship's console. A silent transmission. Encrypted signal detected. Jack's heart sank. They found her. He stood and looked at Lysa. "We have to move now." She didn't panic this time. She stood beside him ready, like someone who had once been broken but now chose to stand. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. The hunters are coming. The stars outside the ship looked peaceful, but Jack knew better. He checked the signal again, and there it was. A deep-coded pulse used by bounty networks to mark high-value targets. It was short encrypted, but dangerous. They had found Lysa. She sat on the floor near the engine humming a soft tune while fixing a loose wire with small, gentle fingers. She was learning fast. Jack didn't want to break the moment, but he had no choice. He sat down beside her and said in a quiet voice, "We need to leave this sector. Now." Lysa looked up, eyes calm, but sharp. "They found me. It wasn't a question." Jack nodded. "Yes, and they're coming fast. Maybe one ship, maybe more." Lysa didn't panic. She stood up and followed him to the cockpit, her steps firm. Jack started the engines and changed course toward the Yan asteroid field nearby, a perfect place to hide for now, as the ship moved. Lysa looked at the stars again, then at Jack. "You could leave me somewhere." Jack turned sharply. "What did you say?" "You leave me. They stop chasing you." Jack shook his head. "That's not going to happen." "Lysa," she frowned. "I make trouble for you. I slow you down." Jack laughed softly for the first time in days. "You fixed my ship. You taught me silence can speak, and you eat all my dried fruit." Lysa blinked, unsure if he was joking. Then she smiled, a little. "You are strange human. Maybe that's why I understand you." He looked ahead, but inside, he was worried. Whoever wanted her back wouldn't stop. Not for law, not for distance. They wanted ownership, not freedom. Later that night, Jack checked the defense. System small blasters worked. The shields were at 70%. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. Lysa sat at the table drawing again. This time it wasn't stars or circles. It was a face Jack didn't recognize. He asked, "Who is that?" She stared at the drawing and whispered, "The man who gave orders, the first one." Jack's chest tightened, so she remembered more than she showed. He asked, "You saw his face?" "Yes, always behind glass eyes like ice, never smiled." Jack stored the drawing in his system. We survive." "I'll find out who he is." Lysa looked at him and said, "He will send hunters with masks. No voices, only orders." Just then the ship's radar beeped. 2 small crafts entered the range fast and low. No signal. No ID. "They're here," Jack said, standing. "Quickly." He handed Lysa a small device. "Go to the storage pod, lock yourself inside. Use this if anyone tries to open it." Lysa took the device but didn't move. "Stay, Lysa. You have to hide, please." She stared at him and slowly shook her head. No more hiding. Jack saw something in her eyes, not fear fire. He gave up arguing and instead ran to the control panel. "Then stay behind me and listen carefully." The first hit shook the ship, a hard blast to the left. Wing. Jack rolled the ship through a spiral, firing back with the lower cannons. He cursed under his breath. "They're not bounty hunters, they're assassins." Lysa walked to the weapon terminal and placed her hands on the controls. "I can help. How do you know this system?" She paused. "I don't know. I just feel it." She pressed a few buttons and locked a pulse wave at one of the crafts. The ship spun. The enemy dodged it barely, but the second wave hit direct. The first attacker was down. Jack blinked in surprise. "You sure you've never done this before?" Lysa gave a tiny smile. "Maybe I was built for more than crying." The second attacker circled back and aimed for the ship's tail. Lisa pressed both palms against the console, her body tense, eyes glowing faintly. The ship's lights flickered. A strange hum filled the room suddenly. A shockwave burst from the rear shield, disabling the second attacker's systems. It spun out of control and vanished into the dark. Silence returned. Jack looked at her breathless. What was that? Lisa sat down slowly, her hands shaking. I don't know, she looked at her fingers like they didn't belong to her. Jack knelt beside her. Whatever it is, it's part of you, and now it's part of us. Outside, the debris of 2 enemy ships floated through the black sky. But Jack knew more would come. And next time, they would be prepared, because Lisa was no longer running. She was choosing to stand. She fought for him. The ship floated silently near a dead moon, covered in black ice. Inside the cabin, Jack was fixing the fried circuits, while Lisa watched him with careful eyes. She hadn't spoken since the battle. Not because she was scared, but because something inside her had changed. She knew now that she was not weak, not broken. She had defended herself. She had defended. Jack looked up from the wires and smiled. I owe you a big thanks. You saved us both. Lisa tilted her head slowly. I only helped. Jack shook his head. You did more than help. You fought with power. You didn't even know you had. Lisa looked at her hands again. Fingers long and steady. Why is it in me? Why do I feel heat when danger comes? Jack stood and placed the tool back in the drawer. Because you were made for more than chains. They shared a quiet moment before the radar beeped again. Not a warning this time. A message-encrypted channel from a rogue merchant Jack once helped during the war. He opened it, and a shaky voice said, Jack, they're not bounty hunters anymore. They sent a recovery unit with elite drones and a neural cage. They want her alive. But silent Lisa heard it all without blinking. Jack cursed under his breath. We can't keep running forever. Lisa stood. Then don't run. He looked at her confused. What do you mean? She walked to the console and opened the ship's map screen. They track you because you protect me. But if I protect you, they will lose. Jack frowned. That's not how it works. They don't care who you protect. They just want control. But Lisa had already decided. That night, Jack dreamed of the past. The war. The blood. The screaming, and in that dream, he saw Lisa standing on a field of fire, wings of light behind her arms, glowing and eyes filled with thunder. He woke up gasping and found Lisa gone. He rushed to the cockpit. She was there, in front of the screen, staring at a warship that had appeared without a sound. It hovered nearby. Black and sharp like a knife in the stars. Jack's hand went to the controls where, leaving now, but Lisa stepped in front of him. No, she pressed her palm against the glass and whispered something in her old language. A word Jack had never heard before. Suddenly, the enemy ship began to move. Not forward, but backward. Then its lights dimmed. Jack stared in shock. What did you do? Lisa turned to him. Her voice steady. I remembered. I was made to protect a temple long ago, but the temple was destroyed, so they erased my memory and sold me. But protection is still in me. Another signal came in from the enemy ship, a voice, cold and sharp. Subject, ZC-72. This is your final command. Return, or we will erase your host. Jack raised his gun. Let them try. But Lisa stepped between him and the console. Her eyes began to glow again, not bright like before, but soft, steady, like fire in a lantern. She walked to the back door of the ship, opened the ramp, and stepped onto the moon's black surface. Jack called her name, but she didn't stop. The warship above sent down drones, fast and armored, each one holding plasma. rods, and neural nets. Jack ran after her gun ready, but stopped at the edge of the ramp because what he saw was not a weak girl. It was something more. Lisa stood still as the drones came near. Then she moved. Not like a soldier, not like a machine. Like something that had waited years to wake up. She jumped high, her arms slicing the air with light. The first drone exploded in sparks. The second one tried to catch her in a net, but she spun around and shouted. Her voice shook the ice. The net shattered. Jack watched, in awe, as Liza fought with power and grace. Each movement was perfect, not learned but remembered. Within minutes, the last drone crashed to the ground, twitching and silent. Liza stood among the wreckage, her breath slow, her hands. Glowing, Jack walked to her carefully. "You're amazing. You know that." She turned to him and smiled. "For real this time. You believed in me before. I believed in myself." Suddenly, the warship above powered up its main cannon. Jack grabbed Lisa's arm. "We have to go now." But Lisa looked up, calm and fearless. "Let me try one more thing." She raised both hands toward the ship and whispered the same word again. The cannon blinked once, then shut down completely. The warship turned slowly and retreated. It vanished into the stars like it had never been there. Jack stared at her with wide eyes. "What are you, Lisa?" She looked at the sky, then back at him. "I don't know yet. But I know I'm not going to be owned ever again." The truth of her origin. The ship moved quietly through deep space after the battle. Jack sat in the medbay scanning Lisa's hand where the glow had returned during the fight. The scanner made soft clicking sounds as it read the signals under her skin. Lisa sat still, calm, but watching the screen closely. She didn't ask questions this time. Jack looked at the results and felt a chill run through his spine. He turned the monitor so Lisa could see. "You're not just enhanced. You were engineered." Lisa blinked but didn't look away. "I was made." Jack nodded slowly. "Yes, but not just made like a tool. You're built from royal DNA fused with combat code. Your cell structure is layered with memory blocks, emotional regulators and power release systems." He took a breath and added, "You were meant to be a queen of War ZC72. Means Zeros. Core number 72. You're part of a failed project." Lisa's voice was soft but steady. "Failed." Jack turned to her with a sad smile. "Not failed because you were weak. Failed because you were kind. They didn't want kindness." Lisa looked down at her hands again. "I was thrown away because I didn't kill." Jack reached out and gently touched her hand. "Yes. And that's exactly why you deserve to live free." They sat in silence for a while as the stars drifted past. Jack got up and walked to the back of the ship, where an old box of Earth items lay. He pulled out a small book with worn pages and sat beside Lisa. "This is called a journal. It's for writing your own story, not someone else's plan." He placed it in her hands. She held it gently, like it was something sacred. "My story," Jack nodded. "You get to decide it now." Later that night, the ship passed near a civilian colony on a quiet planet made of golden dust and blue trees. Jack thought about landing, but the system warned him Zero's core. Alert active near this region, proceed with caution. He looked at Lisa and asked, "Should we keep running?" Lisa shook her head. "No more running. No more hiding. They will follow forever unless I finish it." Jack sighed and leaned back. "What does that mean?" She looked out the window, her reflection staring back at her like a stranger. "I need to go back to the place where I was born." Jack frowned. Zeros core was destroyed years ago. Lisa answered softly, "Not all of it. The deep core still runs hidden in a dark moon near the dead sun, called Vornath. I remember it. Now it came back after I fought. The voice, the lab, the glass wall. It's all there. Jack nodded slowly. Then we go together. He set a course for Vornath. The trip would take 3 days across silent stars and old battlefields floating in the void. During those days, Lysa grew stronger. She trained in the cargo bay, using her body like she had done it all her life. Each move sharper, each jump higher. She focused with the calm of someone who had nothing left to fear. Jack watched her sometimes from a distance, unsure what she was becoming. Not just a warrior, not just a survivor. Something new, something more. One night she walked to the bridge holding the journal. She had written something on the first page. She handed it to Jack. He read it slowly. I was made without a soul, they said. But I have one. It wakes every time someone calls me by the name. Lysa. Jack looked at her and smiled. You gave yourself life. She nodded once. And now I want to give it back. Not to the ones who made me, but to others like me who are still trapped. Jack stared at her for a long time. You think there are more? I know there are more. In cages, in labs, in cryo-sleep, waiting for someone to break the chain. The ship arrived near the Black Moon, a Vornath covered in dark metal ruins and twisted towers that glowed with weak red light. Jack looked down at the screen. Its still running energy readings are low, but real Lysa stood beside him, not afraid. This is where I end their control and begin something else. Jack activated the landing gear and set the ship down near a broken dockage. The ramp opened. Lysa stepped forward first. Her body calm, her heart steady, her mind clear. She was not walking into the place where she was made. She was walking into the place where she would destroy what made her forever. She was never worthless. The Black Moon of Vornath felt cold and heavy, like a grave that never forgot. Wind moved through the broken towers, whispering old commands and lost screams. Lysa stood at the edge of the metal walkway, her feet firm, her eyes glowing faintly under the dark sky. Behind her, Jack checked his weapon and scanned the area. No life signs above ground, but something's humming below. Lysa nodded slowly. The deep core is still alive. They walked through the ruins, metal plates cracking under their boots. Lysa paused beside a shattered glass tube, long and tall, with wires hanging from its sides. I was kept in one like this. She touched the edge gently, as if saying goodbye to an old version of herself. They reached a sealed elevator, its panels still blinking with red light. Lysa stepped forward, placed her palm on the scanner. The door opened without a sound. They rode down in silence, deeper and deeper, past levels filled with dust-broken machines and flickering lights. At the bottom, they stepped into a vast chamber glowing with pulsing blue veins that ran through the walls like veins in a body. Jack looked around slowly. Looks like a heart made of wires. In the center was a tall glass pod, still intact. Inside floated a thin white figure, eyes closed, connected to hundreds of cables. Behind the pod stood a tall man wearing a black coat with silver armor beneath. He turned slowly to face them, his eyes pale as ice, his face untouched by time 72. Lysa didn't blink. I'm not that anymore. I'm Lysa. The man stepped forward, hands behind his back. You were property. Now you are error. I came to fix you. Jack raised his weapon, but Lysa lifted her hand. No, this is my fight. The man spoke again, voice cold and empty. You were designed to protect and obey, not to choose not to feel. Lysa stepped closer. Each word, steady, each breath, clear. I felt fear and hunger and pain, but I also felt kindness and choice and purpose. You made my body, but you never owned my soul. The man shook his head slowly. Souls are myths. We build only function. Lysa closed her eyes. Then let me show you what a myth can do. Suddenly, the lights flickered. The cables pulsed faster. The glass pod behind the man cracked. From the ceiling, mechanical arms dropped down, reaching for Lysa. She jumped, backward rolled across the floor, and launched a blast of pure energy from her palms. Jack stared in shock as the air shimmered and the first wave of machines exploded mid-air. The man raised a device in his hand, aiming it at her chest. A beam shot out and struck her shoulder, knocking her to the ground. "You are still mine," he said. Lisa stood again, blood dripping from her arm, but her eyes glowing brighter than ever. "No, I was never yours." She raised both hands and screamed, not from pain, but from will. The walls began to crack. The cables snapped one by one. The pod shattered and the white figure inside dissolved into light. Jack ran to her side but stopped as she floated slightly above the ground, her body surrounded by light, her wounds closing, slowly. The man stepped back for the first time, uncertain. "What are you?" Lisa answered simply, "Free." She raised one hand and aimed it at the core control behind him. The screen exploded. The base shook violently. Alarms blaring. Jack grabbed her hand. "Time to go." They ran through the shaking hallways, metal falling around them, smoke filling the air. The elevator no longer worked, so they climbed using broken rails and sharp ledges. Jack slipped once, but Lysa caught his hand, her grip strong. They reached the surface as the core below exploded, sending fire through the cracks. The sky above turned red. They rushed into the ship and Jack slammed the controls. The engines roared and the ship lifted just as the ground below shattered. The black moon broke apart, in slow motion, falling into space like a dying star. Lysa stood at the window, breathing hard. Jack sat beside her, staring at the ruins behind. "You did it. You ended it." Lysa didn't speak. She just watched the pieces drift away like chains turning into dust. Later, Jack made tea from a small earth packet and gave her a cup. She took it and said softly, "Was I really worthless?" Once, Jack shook his head. "Never. They just couldn't see what you were because they never looked with real eyes." Lisa opened her journal again and wrote one sentence. "My name is Lysa and I was never broken." She closed the book and looked at the stars. "Now I want to find others like me." Jack raised his cup. "Then let's go find them." And together they flew into the unknown, not as creator and creation, not as master and property, but as equals, as friends, as free forever.